I used both wet and dry felting to create this pig. We started out with wool. Wool looks like this when you purchase it. We got it from a place called Gale Wood Farms. Now this is me taking the wool, separating it, and placing it down in a layer. I'm making sure that the fibers are all going the same direction. The piece that I just put on top is the piece that I'm going to be wrapping this around, so I wanted to make sure it's big enough. It's actually going to be bigger than I want because when we felt, it will shrink. The wool will shrink. I'm using some different colored wool and some plastic pieces, and now I'm placing that green on top again. Notice how many layers of this wool I need. Okay, now for the fun part. This is why we call it wet felting. We're going to take water, soapy water, and place it all over the wool. Now I'm going to agitate the wool. That means I'm going to take my fingers and kind of rub on top of the wool over and over and over. Flipping it over once in a while, putting that net down and rubbing it again. This actually takes a long time. Now, before we're totally done felting, I need to cut those plastic pieces that I hid inside the felt. So I'm using a little scissors and, yep, there it is. Pop that right out. Now I'll cut out the rest of the plastic and start agitating with my fingers again. This agitation takes a long time. Once you're done, you're going to rinse out all of that soap, and in this case, I actually put this in the dryer to make it shrink just a little bit more. The final piece wasn't exactly square, but that's okay. We're going to wrap this around the board that I have sitting right next to it. I did this by adding a couple of tacks down on the back, so I kind of wrapped it around. It's still weird looking, not the right shape. But as I continued, I put staples all the way around the edges, and it wrapped around perfectly. Now, the flat felting that I just showed you, I did again for two pieces that I made into the ear. Now what I'm doing is I took a bowl and I'm trying to make the face. I know that I want the face rounded, so I'm taking a bowl and making that wool kind of wrap around that bowl. I kind of do this the same way, adding water and soap and using my fingers to agitate. This took a long time too. This was not something that just took a short while. I had to agitate for a long time. So here I am. I'm going to flip it just like I did with my flat pieces. I'm going to pull it up, flip it over, and place it on top of that bowl again. I repeated this process for the snout because I also wanted that to have a form under it too. I wanted it to be three-dimensional. I wet felted all of the pieces. For the head. I wet felted the head and the snout and the ears, and then I rinsed them out, and I even took them into the dryer and I dried them for a little bit. This felted them even further, and it made them just a touch smaller. Now I started assembling everything. So here's the snout sewed onto the head, and to make the snout three-dimensional, I stuffed it with some stuffing. Then I used my sewing skills again and started forming the snout. I found some old buttons, some white ones and some black ones. And then I also attached the ears using a needle and some thread. I wanted to make sure that those eyes looked more relaxed, so I put an eyelid on them and stuffed the back, attaching it to the board. It looked something like this when I was all done. Then I started dry felting. This is really fun. You use a tool that kind of looks like a needle, actually 3 or 4 or 8 needles, and you start poking and poking. Notice how you can make sculptural pieces. So I made the eyes kind of more detailed, the ears. I gave the cheeks a little bit of more shape. And here I'm going to do this onto the other side. So let me show you how to dry felt using the tool with all the sharp little needles on it. Here I go. I just poke, poke, poke. I poke away. And what it does is it takes that felt, or it takes that wool, and it presses it together. Those fibers end up sticking together and they're not able to come apart. They get a little bit tighter when you're doing that too, so you can get really sculptural with it. You can make the cheeks puff out or come in. You can make the eyes look a little bit more finished, a little bit more controlled. And that's what I did to finish my pig. Dry felting took a long time too. I really worked on it pretty hard, but I was happy with the results. When all was said and done, the finished piece looked awesome.